Welcome, friend. Take a breath. Wherever you are right now, driving, walking, sitting quietly with a cup of something warm, I want you to let your shoulders drop for just a moment. Because what we're about to spend the next half hour thinking about is not a rule to follow or a task to complete. It's something much gentler than that. It's an invitation to look again, really look at how God forgives. Most of us think we understand forgiveness. We've heard the word 1,000 times in church, in songs, in quiet prayers whispered before bed. But there's a difference between knowing a word and living inside its meaning. Today, we're not just going to talk about forgiveness. We're going to talk about abundance, about a pardon so wide, so deep, so complete, that it changes not just what happens to our past, but how we walk into our future. Here's the question I want you to sit with as we begin. What if the way God forgives you has almost nothing to do with how you forgive yourself? What if His way is bigger, older, and far more generous than the small, cautious grace we tend to offer ourselves and others? Over the next 30 minutes, we'll walk through 5 ideas, not as a checklist, but as a journey. We'll start by rethinking what abundant pardon actually means. We'll picture God not as a distant judge, but as a shepherd who tends wounds rather than causing them. We'll wrestle with our instinct to judge others quickly and learn instead to extend mercy. We'll sit with the story of a man who failed spectacularly and was restored anyway. And we'll close with something practical, a way of living that no longer drags the weight of yesterday into today. So settle in. Let this be less like a lecture and more like a long, unhurried conversation with someone who genuinely wants good things for you. Let's begin. Part 1. What does it mean to be abundantly pardoned? Let's start with a simple but uncomfortable truth. Most people, even those who have been part of a faith community for years, carry a quiet, unspoken doubt about forgiveness. They believe, in theory, that God forgives. But in practice, they live as though forgiveness has a limit, as though there's a ceiling on grace, a point where they've asked one too many times, failed one too many times, and the well finally runs dry. This is where we need to pause and reconsider the picture we've been carrying. Forgiveness, in the way it's often described in Scripture, isn't a grudging concession. It isn't God gritting His teeth and letting you off the hook one more time. The language used is far more generous than that. It doesn't just mean to forgive. It means to pardon abundantly, to forgive with such completeness that it multiplies far beyond the size of the offense. Think about what that actually implies. An abundant pardon isn't measured against your failure. It isn't a response calibrated to match the size of what you did wrong. It's not tit-for-tat mercy. It is instead an overflow, grace poured out so generously that it doesn't just cover the debt, it drowns it. And here's the part that changes everything. This pardon isn't only for the mistake you made yesterday. It reaches into your past, steadies your present, and secures your future. That's a staggering claim. Most of us think of forgiveness as something that deals only with what's already happened, a clean slate for old mistakes. But abundant pardon does something more. It means the sins you haven't even committed yet, the moments you will stumble next month or next year, have already been accounted for in the completeness of what was done for you. Now, I want to be careful here, because this truth can be misunderstood. This isn't a license to live carelessly, to sin without a second thought, because it's already covered. That would be taking a gift and turning it into an excuse, missing the whole point entirely. No, understanding abundant pardon rightly does the opposite. It doesn't make you reckless. It makes you free. It removes the paralyzing fear that keeps people stuck in cycles of guilt, unable to move forward because they're convinced they've used up their last chance. Think about someone who has apologized to a friend so many times for the same mistake that they finally stop trying, not because they don't feel sorry, but because they assume the friendship can't survive one more failure. That's the posture so many people unknowingly bring into their relationship with God. They believe grace has a limit, so they hide their struggles instead of bringing them into the light. They punish themselves preemptively, assuming God is already disappointed, already keeping score, already running low on patience. But abundant pardon says something different. It says, bring it all. Bring the failure from 10 years ago you've never told anyone about. Bring the thing you did last week that you're too ashamed to name out loud. Bring the fear that you're the exception, the one person grace can't quite reach. None of it is too much. None of it is a surprise. None of it exceeds the size of what has already been provided for you. This is the starting point for everything else we'll talk about today. Not a technical theological definition, but a posture shift, a move away from cautious, rationed self-forgiveness and toward believing, really believing, that the pardon offered to you was never meant to be small. Part 2. The Shepherd Who Heals, Not Wounds. Now let's turn to a picture that reframes how we see God's character altogether. The image of a shepherd and his flock. For centuries, this metaphor has been used to describe the relationship between God and his people. But too often, the shepherd gets misunderstood. Some people picture a stern figure with a staff raised, ready to strike, keeping the sheep in line through fear. It's an image shaped more by our own experiences of harsh authority than by what the metaphor was actually meant to convey. A true shepherd doesn't wound the flock to teach it discipline. A true shepherd tends wounds. He doesn't create pain to make a point. He binds up what's already broken. If a sheep wanders off, gets tangled in briars, falls into a ravine, the shepherd doesn't stand over it delivering a lecture about obedience. He goes looking, he carries it back, he cleans the wound. That's the job. That's the character. This distinction matters more than it might seem at first, because how you picture God directly shapes how you respond to your own failures. If you believe God is the kind of figure who allows suffering specifically to punish or teach you a lesson, you will approach every hardship with suspicion, wondering what you did to deserve it, bracing for the next blow. But if you understand God as a shepherd whose instinct is to heal rather than harm, your posture changes entirely. Instead of hiding from him when you're struggling, you run toward him the way an injured sheep would run toward the only one capable of helping it. Consider the kind of language used to describe what a good shepherd provides. Not scarcity, but abundance. Green pastures, not barren fields. Still waters, not turbulent rapids. Rest, not relentless pressure. This isn't the description of a harsh taskmaster. It's the description of someone whose entire purpose is restoration. This picture also helps explain something that troubles a lot of people. Why does suffering happen at all, if God is good? The answer isn't that God manufactures suffering to shape us. Life itself, broken and difficult as it can be, produces enough wounds on its own. Betrayal, loss, disappointment, exhaustion, none of that needs God's help to arrive. What God does, instead, is meet us in the middle of it, not as the source of the wound, but as the one who tends to it. Think of what it means to have your soul restored rather than merely instructed. Restoration implies something was broken and is being put back together. It's gentler than correction. It's not about proving a point. It's about healing what hurts. And when you begin to see God this way, not as someone waiting to catch you doing wrong, but as someone actively working to lead you toward peace. Your entire relationship with your own weaknesses starts to soften. This is especially important for anyone carrying old wounds from environments where love felt conditional, where mistakes were met with harshness rather than compassion. If that's part of your story, I want to gently say, the character we're describing here is different. It isn't modeled after flawed human authority. It's shaped by a shepherd whose method is comfort, whose tools are a staff to guide and a rod to protect, not weapons turned against the very flock he's meant to care for. So as you carry this picture forward, let it settle into how you see your own current struggles. Whatever you're walking through right now, the posture being offered to you isn't judgment. It's tending. It's the quiet, patient work of leading you back to still water. Part 3. Beyond Judgment, Choosing Mercy Over Verdict. Let's move now into something a little more personal, the way we treat other people and the way we're tempted to judge them. There's a well-known story about a king who fell dramatically from grace, a man once celebrated for his integrity who made a devastating choice that hurt people close to him. When confronted, indirectly, through a story about someone else's wrongdoing, his first reaction was fierce judgment. He was outraged at the injustice, until he realized the story was about him. This moment is worth sitting with, because it captures something almost universal about human nature. It is remarkably easy to see clearly and judge quickly when the wrongdoing belongs to someone else. It is remarkably difficult to extend that same clarity to ourselves. We are, most of us, far more understanding of our own failures, full of context, reasons, extenuating circumstances, while offering very little of that same grace to the people around us. This asymmetry causes real damage. Think about how often relationships fracture, not because of the original mistake, but because of how quickly judgment was passed afterward. A friend disappoints you, and instead of remembering the years of loyalty that came before, you fixate on the one failure. A family member says something hurtful in a moment of exhaustion, and instead of extending the same patience you'd want for yourself on a bad day, you file it away as evidence of who they really are. The corrective offered in that ancient story isn't complicated, but it is deeply challenging to practice. It's the reminder that mercy triumphs over judgment, not that judgment doesn't exist, not that wrongdoing doesn't matter, but that when mercy and judgment stand side by side, mercy is meant to be the louder voice. Why does this matter so much? Because the posture we take toward others tends to mirror the posture we secretly hold toward ourselves. If you are quick to condemn other people's mistakes, chances are you are also quietly condemning your own, just more privately, more painfully, in the silence of your own thoughts at night. And the reverse is true as well. Learning to extend patience and understanding to someone else's failure is often the doorway to finally extending that same patience to yourself. This doesn't mean pretending wrongdoing doesn't matter or refusing to acknowledge when someone has caused real harm. Mercy isn't the same as denial. It's not about ignoring truth. It's about choosing what you do with that truth. You can see a person's failure clearly and still choose to lead with compassion rather than condemnation. You can hold someone accountable without treating them as though the mistake defines the entirety of who they are. There's a kind of freedom that comes from stepping off the constant, exhausting job of being a private judge over everyone's life, including your own. Imagine what it would feel like to release that role entirely, not because standards don't matter, but because you've come to trust that the pardon you've received is generous enough to also be generous through you. So here's the practical question worth sitting with after today. Where in your life right now are you holding a verdict over someone? a friend, a family member, a coworker, or yourself, that could be replaced with mercy instead? What would it look like this week to choose understanding over judgment, even just once? Part 4. The man who denied and was restored. Now we come to one of the most encouraging examples in the entire narrative, the story of a disciple who failed at the worst possible moment and was not discarded because of it. This was a man known for his boldness, someone who had walked closely with his teacher for years, who had declared with total confidence that he would remain loyal no matter what happened. And yet, in a moment of fear, under pressure, standing near a fire on a cold night, he denied even knowing his teacher, not once, but 3 times. The third time, as the story goes, was followed almost immediately by a rooster crowing, and the weight of what he had done broke him completely. Picture the shame in that moment. Not just failure, but public failure. Not just a private mistake, but a betrayal of someone he loved. At the exact moment, loyalty mattered most. If there was ever a candidate for being permanently written off, it would be understandable to think it was him. But that's not what happened. In the aftermath, this same man wasn't cast aside. He wasn't relegated to the sidelines as damaged goods, tolerated but never trusted again. Instead, he was restored, not quietly, not partially, but fully. He went on to become one of the most significant, boldest voices in the early community of believers, someone whose life and words carried enormous influence. This is where the story becomes deeply personal for anyone who has ever felt disqualified by their own past, because the temptation, after a serious failure, is to assume the story is over, that whatever purpose or potential once existed has now been forfeited, that once you've proven yourself capable of that level of failure, trust and usefulness are gone for good. But this account pushes back hard against that assumption. It suggests something almost countercultural, that failure, even catastrophic failure, does not have the final word. That restoration isn't a reluctant, minimal reinstatement, a demotion dressed up as mercy, but a genuine full return to purpose. Consider what it would have meant for that mission to move forward, later, without him, if that failure had permanently sidelined him. Instead, this individual becomes a central figure, someone whose past failure is not hidden or erased from the record, but is instead part of a larger story of restoration. His life becomes proof that a devastating mistake does not automatically mean disqualification. This matters enormously for anyone listening right now who carries their own version of that fireside failure, a moment they wish they could take back, a decision that still brings a flush of shame when it crosses their mind. The lesson isn't that the failure didn't matter. It clearly did. It caused real pain. The lesson is that failure and future usefulness are not mutually exclusive. You are not disqualified by what happened. You are not permanently benched because of one moment, or even several moments, of falling short. If you are waiting for some sense of worthiness to return before you step back into whatever you feel called toward, whether that's a relationship, a responsibility, a dream you've quietly shelved, this story suggests you might be waiting for something that isn't actually a prerequisite. Restoration doesn't require you to first prove you deserve it. It's offered before you feel ready, often precisely because you don't feel ready. Part 5. Living free from self-condemnation. We've covered a lot of ground: the size of the pardon offered, the tenderness of the shepherd who provides it, the choice to extend mercy rather than judgment, and the story of a man restored after failure. Now, in this final section, let's talk about what it actually looks like to live differently because of all this. The invitation here isn't complicated. but it does require a real shift in how you relate to your own past. It starts with releasing the need to establish your own righteousness, the exhausting, endless effort to prove, through performance, that you are good enough. So many people live in a kind of quiet anxiety, constantly trying to earn a standing that, according to everything we've discussed today, was never meant to be earned in the first place. It was meant to be received. This distinction matters because it changes your relationship with failure itself. If your standing depends on your performance, every mistake becomes a threat, evidence that you're slipping, that you're losing ground, that the approval you've worked so hard for might be withdrawn. But if your standing is something already given to you, freely, abundantly, then a mistake becomes something different. It becomes an opportunity to return, not a verdict to fear. Living this way practically means a few things. It means when you fail, and you will, because everyone does, your first response isn't hiding. Hiding is the instinct of someone who believes they're on probation, that one more mistake might be the final one. But if you trust the pardon is abundant, your instinct shifts. Instead of hiding, you bring the failure into the light. You name it honestly, without the theatrical self-punishment some people mistake for humility. It also means releasing the habit of self-condemnation as a form of penance. There's a strange belief many people carry, often without realizing it, that beating themselves up over a mistake somehow proves they take it seriously, as though a certain amount of suffering is required before forgiveness can be accepted. But punishing yourself doesn't make the pardon more effective. It just delays you from living inside of it. The debt isn't waiting for your self-flagellation to be paid. It's already settled. And finally, it means extending that same generosity outward, becoming someone whose presence feels safe to people who are ashamed of their own failures. If you've genuinely absorbed the idea of abundant pardon, it should soften how you respond when someone close to you messes up. Instead of becoming another voice of condemnation in their life, you become one of the rare people who responds with understanding instead of judgment. Not because the mistake doesn't matter, but because you know firsthand what it feels like to be forgiven completely. This is what a life free from self-condemnation actually looks like. Not perfection. That was never the goal. Not the absence of failure. That's not realistic for anyone. But a fundamentally different relationship with failure itself. One where mistakes don't send you spiraling into shame or hiding, but instead send you back toward the same abundant pardon that was always available, without needing to earn your way back into it. Closing, as we come to the end of this time together, I want to leave you with something simple to carry forward. Somewhere, right now, you might be holding on to a version of yourself defined by a mistake, something from years ago, or something as recent as this morning. Maybe you've quietly assumed that particular failure put you in a different category, that the generous grace we've been describing applies to other people, but somehow not quite to your specific situation. I want to gently push back on that assumption one more time before we close. The pardon we've talked about today was never described as narrow or conditional. It was described as abundant, wide enough to cover what you did yesterday, steady enough to hold you today, and generous enough to already account for tomorrow. The shepherd tending that story isn't standing over you with a raised hand, waiting for the next mistake. He's already moving toward you, ready to bind up whatever is wounded. You don't have to keep judging yourself with the harshness you'd never actually offer a friend. You don't have to believe that your failure, however serious, permanently disqualifies you from restoration or purpose. And you don't have to keep trying to earn something that was designed from the very beginning to be received rather than achieved. So take a breath, Let your shoulders drop again, the way they did at the start of this. Whatever you're carrying right now, set it down, even just for today. Not because it didn't matter, but because it's already been dealt with more completely than you may have realized. Thank you for spending this time here. Wherever you go next, go gently with yourself. That, more than anything else, is the way this story was always meant to be lived. Content,